Welcome to this video on the cognitive processes associated with learning. In this video, we'll unpack some of the basic processes associated with learning. With this foundation in place, we should be able to identify some of the ways in which we can promote student learning by aligning our teaching methods with the way the learning brain works. Learning begins fairly simply when we take things into our sensory memory through our five senses. Right now, for example, you are hopefully both listening to my voice and watching the video on the screen. And presumably, you are also experiencing a wide variety of other sensory inputs. There might be other things in your sight line, other noises in the background, or other things coming in through the rest of your senses. Fortunately, the sensory memory has a very large capacity, so we can handle all of these things all at the same time. This large capacity also means that we can take in a lot of information quite quickly. For example, if your eyes are shut and then you open them, assuming your eyes are functioning as they should, you suddenly and immediately have a lot of new data at your disposal. On the other hand, the duration of the sensory memory is quite short. If we shut off the lights or you shut your eyes, then all of that information you had access to pretty immediately disappears. So the challenge between the many competing inputs and the short duration for the sensory memory is to focus our attention on the right inputs for long enough to get information into what we call the working memory. The working memory is the place where processing of information takes place. It's where the so-called thinking happens and where we might say that understanding comes in. The challenge for the working memory is that it has a relatively small capacity. Especially as we're learning new things, there is a significant limit on how many new ideas we can work with all at the same time. So when you are teaching, it is important to give students sufficient time to work with new information and skills and to avoid overloading them with new information before giving them a chance to work with what they are learning. Of course, we don't learn in total isolation from the rest of our brains, which is where the long-term memory comes in. As we are processing information in our working memory, we also retrieve things we already know and add those to the mix. This could be specific concepts, facts, connections between ideas, processes we've learned before, and so on. The point is that we work with both the things coming in through our senses and the things we're retrieving from our long-term memories. As an instructor, then, it is important to help our students make connections between new information and ideas or skills they are already acquainted with. Ultimately, we say that learning has taken place when the results of the processing in our working memory are encoded into our long-term memories in such a way that we can use them again later. This could be in the form of new connections between old ideas, new concepts or skills embedded in existing frameworks, or some combination or variation of those two things. So, to recap, we take information in through our senses, play around with it in our working memory, and ultimately, hopefully, get it effectively and usefully encoded into our brains. One of the keys to effective instruction that follows from all of this is the importance of helping our students focus on the right things as they learn, both in terms of the information that is coming in through their senses and the stored information they are retrieving from their long-term memories. Further, it is important to give students sufficient time to process what they are learning, recognizing that the working memory has a limited capacity and can become overwhelmed if too much is expected of learners too soon. Now, let's return for a moment to the landscape of learning that we introduced in the first video in this series. Students engage in learning activities such as listening to a lecture, participating in a discussion, or solving a problem. The brain does some stuff, and learning occurs. In this video, we have unpacked what it is the brain does in that process. This gives us a great starting point to help us identify specific ways in which we can improve learning through our teaching practices. In the next videos in this series, we will add to this by layering in an understanding of metacognition and motivation to learn, followed by a discussion of the impact of the wrong kinds of stress on the abilities to continue learning. Finally, we will wrap this series up with a look at the role of inclusive, assets-based teaching practices on our students' learning. By the end of this series, we hope you will be able to use this more robust view of how learning works to inform your instructional practices and increase your students' learning. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for video 3.